Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest half hour anywhere online today. Appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube. Let's set the table for today, and what a full table it is, because we are going to be talking about vegan restaurants. From the environment to economics. And joining us is entrepreneur Kim Anderson from Plant City in Rhode Island. Kim, appreciate you being here. And Dr. Neal Barnard is also here with a look at how the food we eat has a massive impact on the environment. Dr. Barnard, always an important conversation.
Hey there, Chuck.
It is amazing how many resources are used up just to make 1 pound of beef. But what if we swapped out that beef for beans? That could make a huge difference to the world. Plus, Dr. Barnard is going to be answering your questions when we open up the doctor's mailbag. So if you have something on your mind, go ahead and drop that in the comments now, and he'll be prescribing an answer in just a little bit. But first, let's get you caught up on the latest happenings. Here are your health headlines for Friday, September 11th, 2020. It's possible the coronavirus may have been spreading in Los Angeles months earlier than originally thought. UCLA researchers say they've analyzed data from late December through February, showing a surge in the number of patients treated for cough and respiratory failure, both of which are symptoms of the coronavirus. The caseload was 50% higher than the same time frame over the last 5 years. To date, there have been more than 6.4 million cases in the U.S., nearly 2 million more than any other country. In other news, a new study finds the number of people with high blood pressure in the U.S. is on the rise following 15 years of decline. Currently, there are nearly 108 million Americans with hypertension, but less than half have it under control, putting them at risk for heart attack and stroke. Of the more than 50,000 patients who participated in the study, just 8% who had not visited the doctor within the last year did not have high blood pressure. The survey also finds those over the age of 60 were more likely to have hypertension that was not being treated. And finally, the world's largest pork processor is coming under fire from the Labor Department for failing to protect its workers from the coronavirus. The fines come following an investigation into its plant in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where nearly 1,300 workers became infected, resulting in 4 deaths. That is according to OSHA. Records showed the first employee tested positive in late March, and the virus quickly spread, at one point averaging 67 new cases every day. The fine of almost $13,500 is, in fact, the maximum allowed by law, but a union representing the workers calls the paltry sum, quote, insulting and a slap on the wrist. I want to bring Dr. Barnard into the conversation to dig a little bit deeper. Dr. Barnard, obviously, this is something you and I have been discussing for months now. And in this specific case, following the investigation, on one hand, you have this fine at just one plant. Small start. But on the other hand, it is in fact the heftiest fine possible. So is it fair to say that this is a good start?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the way to put it, Chuck. It is a start, but as you pointed out, 4 people have died, and the entire consequence for the company is a fine of $13,000, and they can continue to maintain the very conditions that caused those deaths in the first place. But I think that the problems go beyond that. And in fact, let me show you some numbers. Can we bring up my screen? As of today, can you see this?
I can indeed, sir.
42,534 cases of slaughterhouse workers have tested positive for COVID-19. And the deaths go far beyond those 4 that happened initially in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We've now got 203 dead. So from the standpoint, you can understand why the labor unions are extremely concerned about people going into a place where infections are just an ongoing situation. But from a public health standpoint, what happens if you have infected workers? That means their coworkers are infected. It means their family members can be infected. It means they carry it to the community. And in the state of South Dakota, we've talked about this figure. When the pandemic emerged, more than half the cases in the entire state were in that one single building, the Smithfield Slaughterhouse. And so we've seen this in hundreds of similar facilities across the United States where the slaughterhouses, because people are working under not such hygienic conditions, they are shoulder to shoulder, the virus easily passes around them, then that becomes the hotbed for the community. I and many others have said it's really time to recognize that cholesterol is not essential. We don't need slaughterhouses, period. They should be out of business. And so we are very much with the idea that the slaughterhouse workers need help in transitioning to better employment. And if we can move our national appetites in a more plant-based direction, it could revolutionize our health and it could keep our families safer.
Changing, and that's what the trends do show. Hopefully that will accelerate now because of the pandemic, and if there is any good news that comes out of this, it will be it encourages us to eat that healthier diet in the future.
I certainly hope so. And I think the problem we have now is sort of a complacency, that people are used to the idea that the pandemic is going to kill people. They're used to the idea that diabetes and hypertension will kill people, and that combination is especially deadly. And it's peculiar to think that complacency has kind of set in, but I'm sorry to say that it has. But when people think about their loved ones and their neighbors and community members, maybe they can think about making some bigger changes for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, well, you talk about complacency, you talk about those numbers and just kind of accepting them. Well, last night the NFL season kicked off, and they typically play in a stadium of about 70,000 fans. And when you look at you just take the coronavirus and the number of deaths for that, you could sell out 3 of those stadiums almost, every single seat in the house packed, and that would be the number of people who have died in the U.S. alone during this pandemic. To me, that puts it into perspective.
And at the risk of sounding alarmist, we are really still beginning. It's now early September. It's not yet the flu season. And so you might have heard Dr. Fauci making his predictions for what's going to happen as the weather gets colder. Most Americans and most people around the globe have not yet been exposed to this virus. So there's a lot of room for the virus to just wreak havoc. So it's a bit of a race. There are folks who are betting on a vaccine, and hopefully there will be a vaccine or more than one soon. But in the meantime, but between now and the time we actually have a safe vaccine, it's really a question of not only masking and social distancing and good hygiene, but also doing everything we can to eat in a healthy way so that the diabetes, the hypertension, the obesity are tackled, and we are not just set up for a really bad infection. And then back to the slaughterhouses. When many of them were closed, that was a really good thing, and that should happen again.
All right, Dr. Barnard, stick around. I will be coming back to you momentarily, but right now let's go ahead and change gears, because it comes as no surprise that the economy took a significant downturn because of the pandemic, with the restaurant industry among the hardest hit. But what may come as a surprise to many is that the appetite for plant-based foods actually helped to buoy many vegan restaurants, while others struggled to stay afloat. A report by the popular app Happy Cow over the summer found that vegan restaurants, more of them actually opened than closed during the pandemic. And so today we are joined by someone who knows these trends very well. In fact, her business, Plant City in Providence, Rhode Island, houses a number of vegan restaurants under one roof. Awesome idea. Please welcome Kim Anderson to the Exam Room Live. Kim, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
My first question to you is, you've got a number of restaurants under one roof. So what exactly is Plant City?
So our family is invested in sustainable energy and renewable energy. And my son came to us and said, the fastest way to bring down climate issues and environmental issues is to invest in plant-based foods. So we started doing that. And then I realized a lot of people were thrilled with it. They could go buy a Beyond Meat, or they could go do this in their kitchen, but they couldn't go out and eat. And I didn't want to do just one restaurant. I wanted to create the world's first plant-based food hall. So Plant City is just that, the world's first plant-based food hall. We are 100% vegan plant-based. We're 100% palm oil free, and we're also certified kosher, which makes us the only kosher food hall outside of Israel.
Wow. Okay, so you have a lot going on. How many restaurants are currently there?
So we have 4 restaurants under one roof. We have an Italian restaurant, a Mexican restaurant, an American bistro, and a cafe and a coffee bar, as well as an event space, which we usually do classes, and Dr. Barnard has been there to visit us to share his wonderful information, which that is not currently running. So we have those are all open currently, and doing quite well, as you suggested earlier, with the numbers from your source.
Well, let's talk about the challenges and obstacles that you've been able to overcome during the pandemic. Have you noticed, as the trends in plant-based eating have have increased here in the U.S., have you noticed, even though the sit-down portion was closed for a little while, you're seeing increased traffic, increased clientele, or what have you been able to do during the pandemic yourselves to stay in business?
Yeah, thank you so much. We opened a year ago, June, and we served 450,000 guests in our first year. And to put that in perspective, that's the same as one person being vegan for 429 years, which saved 117 million gallons of water, 4.7 million square feet of forest, 6.3 million pounds of grain, and 3.2 million pounds of carbon from the atmosphere. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people who are coming because they heard the food was good, and then they're learning about plant-based while they're there. Only about 80% of our, 20% of our customers are plant-based when they walk through the door. But we've had this amazing ripple effect of people saying, I thought I was going to have to eat lettuce and tofu for the rest of my life, but I can see that I can eat a pizza and a burger and all these pastas and tacos. And between the restaurants, we have over 280 items on our menu. There's something for everyone. And so this unknown becomes very concrete. And a lot of those folks have written to us or said to us, because of this, I realized I can do this. I didn't think I could, but now I can. And, a lot of people bring back their friends, and it's had this amazing ripple effect. And actually, alluding to something else that you mentioned, there have been several other food trucks and restaurants that have opened in the area because they look at Plant City and they say, look at the business they're doing. If they can do it, we can do it. And I never look at that as a bad thing or a competition. I look at this as, isn't this wonderful? We can't serve 1 million people in Rhode Island all by ourselves. There's going to have to be other people that do it. And even a lot of the local restaurants are adding more plant-based options because people are asking for them and because they're seeing the success of Plant City. So that's been incredibly exciting to see.
That is amazing. You quoted a lot of statistics, the positive impacts on the environment there. So even though you're not officially having classes right now, do people still get the opportunity to get that education when they come there?
Yeah, they do. I have a little poster board wall with postcards on it that people can just take, and it's the 10 reasons from Rich Roll on why you would want to go plant-based, other sources to learn more, and all the videos and the websites, and so we a little velvet hammer. We don't come on strong with a soapbox, but if we get into a conversation with anybody, we just whip those out and share them with them so that they can take that with them. We carry a lot of the books, some of Dr. Neal's books, as well as Dr. Greger's books. We regularly do speakers, and I'm now working on getting that online. And my partner is Matthew Kenny. He's the top plant-based chef in the world out of LA. He has 25 restaurants on 5 continents, and I believe has opened 3 during COVID. And I took 4 of his favorites with him, and that's how we opened Plant City. So we knew we had a going Jenny before we opened with successful restaurants. And he's doing courses called the Future of Food Institute, and very reasonable. He's got over 1,000 people taking plant-based food courses online, and that was a COVID production.
Talk to me about some of the strategies that you've had to employ to keep business going during the pandemic. I'm not sure if Rhode Island was one of the states where everything was locked down. Maybe it was, but then gradually started to reopen. So what strategies did you guys use to stay afloat?
It's a really great question. I have told people that this is like entrepreneurship as a contact Olympic sport. Every day it's, blocking and tackling and try to solve. So we closed the day before the governor actually closed down restaurants in the state and everything else in Rhode Island on March 14th. And that was because a lot of our employees were really, really uncomfortable coming to work. And I totally understood that. So we just said, okay, we're going to close. But when the dust settled that night, Chef called me and said, we've got, and I had 140 employees. Chef called and said, I've got about a core of about 50 people that really want to stay on because they want the job and they need the job. And I said, okay, let's do this. Let's just do curbside and let's do delivery. 2 things that we were already doing, but in a very small part of our business. And overnight, that blew up enough to sort of sustain and at least pay for that help. As that grew, over the next 6 or 7 weeks, the governor allowed us to do outdoor dining. So we started doing outdoor dining, and actually I dropped a massive tent in the parking lot, and we decorated it. We put plants in it and little lights, and it became the hot spot in the city to go to because people were feeling more comfortable with eating outdoors. The Department of Health has actually been to Plant City and said we're doing it better than any other restaurant in Rhode Island. As I took the PPP money, I knew that the only way to do that was to build the sales enough as getting up to those 120, 130 employees with the PPP funds, was to be able to make the sales rise in according to that, so that he didn't have to lay people off on July 1. I didn't want to bring them back in end of May, early June, and have to lay them off the end of July. It just didn't make sense. So we added a takeout window, which has been incredibly successful. And we put some marketing into our delivery and our curbside. So we literally then opened indoor dining. So we are now running indoor dining for 160 seats, used to be like 280, outdoor dining about 70 on the patio, curbside delivery, curbside pickup, delivery. I have 8 to 10 full-time drivers, depending on the shift, as well as a takeout window. It's literally like spinning plates, but it's what you have to do in order to make the sales, to be able to pay the staff and keep on all of these amazing team members. And our guests have been incredibly generous. The tips have been phenomenal. So they're actually doing quite well, maybe even a little better financially than they were. Going into fall is going to be very scary because, in New England, we aren't going to be able to have people sitting outside on 50 and 40 degree weather days. Some will, but not the kind of business that we're doing right now. So we're really working hard to develop our app. When we closed in March, we already had 5,600 people on our app. We now have about 17,000. I'm hoping that by the time the cold weather gets here, we'll get up to about 18 or 25,000, maybe even 30,000 people on our app, so that we can continue to keep this amazing team employed through the fall and the winter, and sharing our awesome plant-based food with as many people as possible. They're not sitting home eating an animal meal, they're eating one of ours. It's delicious, it's affordable, it's accessible, and it's plant-based.
Oh, it's so obvious that you have a business mind. I love this so much. Talk to me about, it sounds like everything's trending positively. Can you just quantify a little bit percentage-wise the volume of orders you have today versus pre-pandemic? Has it balanced out, or are you even more?
Not exactly the same, no. I'd say we're about 85% of the business that we used to do. We had 150 employees. Now we're down to 130, 125. It flexes within the week, But so the sales are pretty much there. But the one thing I'm looking at, okay, it's a secret with your team here and all those folks that are happening to watch this. We were going to be expanding and making more plant cities in other cities. But the idea right now of building a behemoth with 14,000 square feet or more in a city where people don't want to go indoors does not make sense. So what we are doing is pivoting towards a drive-through model. So drive-through, comfort food, plant-based food are 3 of the top trends in the world right now, and especially in this country, and we're going to combine all 3. So I'm going to encourage everyone to go to our Instagram page, Plant City Providence, and follow us and see when we're able to get to your neck of the woods.
Oh, you're getting a follow from me for sure. And just from everything that you're describing, I would feel comfortable with the metrics that you have today, looking ahead to fall in the winter months, even though you're not going to be able to do the outdoor dining, and that's going to restrict the number of seats that you have. But just the fact that the sheer volume of takeout and delivery has grown the way that it is, to me, that sounds like you're still pretty well positioned for moving forward into the cold weather months.
We are, and we'll keep advertising that, and we'll keep working it. I actually put a curbside ambassador out so that as the cars pull up, they're greeted by one of our folks, so that going into the fall, they'll have complete confidence that they're going to be taken care of at the curbside.
All right. Now, Kim, here's what I want to do. I would love to be able to check in with you periodically to see how things are going. I absolutely adore this concept, and I cannot wait for the pandemic to be over, because it would be an honor then if we could take the exam room and actually do a live broadcast from Plant City.
Would love that. And Dr. Greger was up recently. He needed to escape New York, and he came and he ate for a full day at Plant City. He's a regular visitor and a friend. So if you need to escape the city, come see us.
Outstanding. All right, Kim Anderson, give them a visit, plantcitypvd.com. Thank you so very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, let's move on now quickly and talk about the risk posed not by the food that is being served at vegan restaurants, but at its competitors whose menus are still filled with standard American diet staples. More specifically, let's take a look at where that food is coming from, because the threats posed by the meat industry are now extending far beyond the walls of the meatpacking plants that we spoke about earlier. A new report now highlighting the destruction of animal agriculture, the destruction that is being wreaked on our ecosystem. One of the more alarming findings in the report, the animal population worldwide has declined nearly 70% in just 50 years. With those figures, it doesn't appear that there's even a question as to whether or not our current way of eating is indeed sustainable. So, Dr. Barnard, as we wrap things up here on the exam room for today and for the week, you hear these numbers. We have talked about the effect that the standard American diet that's having on the environment. It again just never ceases to amaze me how much destruction is happening on a daily basis.
That's right. And in fact, let me share my screen again, because I want to walk you through a little bit about why this is happening. Let's say a person goes to KFC or something like that, and they order a chicken meal. What you may not appreciate is it's not just you doing that, not you, Chuck, but it's the person who might be doing that. It's not just one person. Americans eat 1 million chickens per hour, and they are not ordering room service. They have to be fed grains that are raised somewhere. And it's not just chickens, it's also cows, and it's also pigs. And this intensive farming, simply to satisfy this appetite for meat, is a huge drain on the population. Now, this is a picture outside my own hometown of Fargo, North Dakota. And you see these beautiful corn plants, as far as the eye can see, all identical, because they're genetically engineered to raise corn not for people, but for animals. And if you, on the other side of the road, you might see soy plants, and it's not soy to make tofu or soy milk. It's there to make soybeans to feed cows and pigs and chickens. Here's the problem. It all needs to be fertilized. You need pesticides, and you need irrigation. Whatever doesn't come out of the sky as rain has to be added as irrigation. So the costs of irrigation are huge. Let's say you brush your teeth. You keep the water running while you do it. That's a gallon of water you used. Take a luxuriating shower, 20 gallons of water. Wash your car, 65 gallons of water. But producing 1 pound of chicken, because of the irrigation water that you need for the feed grains, takes 420 gallons for just that 1 pound of chicken. And if it's beef, 5,000 gallons. That's the amount of water that has to go into the corn crops, the soybean crops, to feed not humans, but to feed animals. Okay, but we're just getting started, because that water, it's not really gone. It'll cycle back into the atmosphere, it can be replaced, so forth. Yes, yes, yes. Except between the runoff from these fields and then the runoff you see from other operations like a dairy operation, the water tends to get polluted. The little rivers and streams get pesticides. They get fertilizer in the streams. That causes a dead zone in the water. The fertilizer causes algae to overgrow. They kill off the other life forms. And in the Gulf of Mexico, right below Texas and Louisiana, there are 8,000 square miles of dead zone that would not be there were it not for people raising feed crops for animals. So I hope I've cheered everybody up on this Friday afternoon, Chuck. I have to say, the best thing you can do for the environment is to go to a plant-based diet.
Indeed, go to a place like Plant City. That Kim has opened up. All right, Dr. Barnard, let's. Wow, boy, this is definitely a feel-good Friday. Let's open up the doctor's mailbag to really bring things home for the week. And as we reach in, pull in the final question for the week. This one comes to us, Dr. Barnard, from Jill, and she writes: should I start taking a vitamin C supplement? My family is worried about what this flu season will be like with the coronavirus still hanging around. I'm curious, though, if high levels of C actually help the immune system, or if this is just an old wives' tale whose effects of supplementing have been greatly exaggerated.
Great question. And I think you're right to put a big question mark on it, because whenever you think of some commercial product that's sort of an easy route to better health promises, you wonder if it's really true. Well, Linus Pauling was the biggest advocate for vitamin C, and at the time of his death, he was taking a huge amount of vitamin C every day. He was taking about 18 grams. Don't try this at home. That's many, many times the recommended daily allowance. But he was a big believer and a big advocate for it. And in the years since then, there have been many other advocates. So what do the data show? There was actually quite a good study that came out of the UK a number of years ago, looking at people who did have some respiratory conditions. And they found that vitamin C actually did help them. It improved their respiratory conditions. And that's important, because when we're talking about influenza, or COVID-19. These are respiratory conditions, and vitamin C does seem to help. The striking thing about this study, though, was the dose that they used. If you go to the drugstore and you look at the vitamin aisle, you'll see 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, and you'll see people taking maybe a couple of thousand milligrams. The amount they used in this study was just 200. So it was many times less than what is often being used by other people. So the point being, a little bit of vitamin C really does seem to help. So the question is, do you get it from food? Citrus fruits have it. Green vegetables have it, surprisingly. Meat does not have it. Animal products don't give you vitamin C. It's a plant nutrient. Or do you take a pill? If Linus Pauling were here, he would say, get as much as you can from food. In other words, eat your fruits and eat your vegetables. But he would argue for a supplement, and I think the evidence is on his side.
All right, so boy, that number just, you said he was taking somewhere around 18 grams a day. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. 18,000 milligrams, 18 grams a day.
Okay, yeah, so let's put that into perspective. I pulled up the facts as you were talking because you blew my mind. In the average orange, there's about 63 milligrams. So that would be well short of the 18,000 that would be in 18 grams. Holy moly. He was a believer, was he not? Oh, my God.
He was, but nobody else is going to push you to have that much. But the real vitamin C advocates would say go for maybe 1 gram or 2 grams a day or something like that. The amount in foods is substantially less than that. And many people are really low because they're eating chicken or they're eating beef or they're eating pork. And those don't have vitamin C at all. And so it's no wonder that people are promoting a supplement. It's to sort of make up for the deficient. It's a funny thing. There are a lot of deficiencies in a meat-based diet. And people often wonder if their vegan friend is going to be adequately nourished. The real question is, could a meat eater get nutrition? Because there's zero fiber, there's zero vitamin C, there's zero complex carbohydrates in meat products. So to an extent, supplements make up for meat's deficits. But people are using them really almost like medications, where they're going beyond even what you could get on a plant-based diet.
All right, Dr. Barnard, thank you so very much, my friend. Appreciate your wisdom as always.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right. And so you hear us talk about the Barnard Medical Center frequently on this show, but Dr. Barnard was just underscoring why the Barnard Medical Center can be so important, because that can help you get your diet on track so that you can get as much of your vitamins and nutrients as possible from the food that it is that you are eating. And so if you are interested in doing just that, you can work with their doctors and dietitians. Now telemedicine appointments available in more than a quarter of the country, including most recently the state of Texas. So you see that full list right there on your screen right now. Let me give you the phone number to call. 202-527-7500 is the number to call to schedule an appointment. And because it's telemedicine, of course, you can also schedule your appointment online by visiting barnardmedical.org. That's going to do it for us today. My thanks again to Kim Anderson from Plant City for joining us, and to the crew behind the scenes that makes the show happen. Thanks, guys. And a special big thank you to you who is watching right now, my exam roomie. I appreciate you being here more than you will ever possibly know. On behalf of Dr. Neal Barnard and everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. We'll talk to you again on Monday, but until then, have yourself a phenomenal weekend. And remember to stay safe, take a stand, and keep it planted.